on the CISO series video chat, Hacking the Insider Risk Summit. But before we officially begin, we have our cold open. It's going to be telling it to the board. The topic is insider risk. I have here with me Masha Sedova and Joe Payne, who are going to explain in less than 1 minute, as if they're speaking to the board, alternating one line at a time, what is insider risk. Are you ready? Joe, you're first. You ready to go, Joe?
I am ready. I love
Here we
talking to my
go.
board about.
On your mark, get set, go.
Hello, board. As you know, we have been rolling out our digital business strategy over the last year.
And while we have had lots of technology enable our workforce to remotely work as fast as possible and from anywhere, it comes with consequence.
Yeah, it turns out that all those digital products like Slack and Teams and OneDrive that we've been rolling out to make everyone productive and move fast, that's worked. But
if you took a look at the last year's Verizon Data Breach Report, 85% of all the breaches that was covered were due to human factor. So there's something we're missing here.
right, and those humans are basically using those, occasionally using those technologies that we've rolled out to exfiltrate data from the company.
And in addition to employees who are maliciously and disgruntledly exfiltrating data, we're also seeing unintentional error.
Boom.
Very
1 minute and
good.
4 seconds.
I'll take it. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Welcome, everybody. The CISO series video chat is
We're beginning
ready to
the show,
begin.
and let's tell you what's going to happen today over the next hour. For those of you who are regulars for the CISO series video chat, you know what you're about to expect. Today's topic is Hacking the Insider Risk Summit, an hour of critical thinking about creating a security-aware culture. And who are our two guests? Well, you just saw them. Masha Sedova, who's the president over at Elevate Security, and Joe Payne, who's the chairman of Insider Risk Summit. I'll also give you a hint. He's also the CEO of Code 42. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Insider Risk Summit. We're on the eve of the Insider Risk Summit. The actual summit starts tomorrow. It's going for 2 days, and we're going to tell you all about how to get on that as well in just a second. But for those who've never participated in one of the CISO series video chats, let me explain. There are 6 different ways you can participate. One is there is the chat room. You see how that's working. 2, submit the bad ideas. All right, so we want to know your worst idea on insider risk. What is the absolute worst way to handle that? And then at one point, you're going to have a chance to vote for your favorite bad ideas. Then you need to submit unique strategies on dealing with insider risk. I don't want best strategies, but unique, because it's all about hacking the concept of insider risk. We want creative new ideas on this. You can join us on video at any time, anybody, to ask a question, make a comment, just type bring me on, and Andrew, the producer, will try to bring on as many of you as possible. Also, ask a question. You see there's a little link right there at the bottom of the screen to ask a question. Please go ahead and do that. And you can vote for your favorite question at any time as well. Especially if a lot come in, I'll need to know which ones are the most popular. All right, explain it to the board. We just did that. Then we're going to go to your bad ideas and questions. We'll put the poll live at 20 minutes past the hour. You'll vote for your favorite bad idea. And we'll also want to know what your unique tip is at this time as well. Then we'll play the Department of Yes. And both Masha and Joe are a little nervous about this, I'm going to be honest. We'll see how well they handle it. And then you'll vote for your favorite questions. You can actually do that anytime. The best bad idea contenders will come on, defend why their bad ideas are truly the worst. Then we'll have your last questions and final advice. And then we'll do our meetup. We're going to do it on our new space, Toucan. So not the one-on-one, but more the area where you can sort of drift around and sort of meet people for a few minutes and then drift to another conversation. All right. Next chat will be this Friday, September 17th, 2021. It will be Hacking Active Directory, an hour of critical thinking on securing the, quote, keys to the kingdom. The link to do that is right there at the bottom of the screen. You can click at that at any time to register for the Friday's video chat. It will not take you out of this video chat. You will still very much be in this video chat. You will not go to the next one. But I do want to mention that link is going to change halfway through the show for the link to register for the Insider Risk Summit if you have not done that. But I will also add the link to that right now there. All right, let's end this and let's get into our conversation with both Masha and Joe. And Masha and Joe, let me start with this sort of grand question I have for both of you is, what are the permutations that make up insider risk? Because it's a pretty big topic. And in fact, so big, you're having a 2-day conference on the very subject. So, and sort of like, could you give me like a table of contents as what the permutations of insider risk is, Joe?
That sounded like a Masha question, but I'll go ahead and
whoever wants to answer it first.
No, I was just kidding. Listen, the reason we don't call it insider threat anymore is I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they think of this space is to think about every risk created by insiders as a threat. And a lot of the activity that is, in fact, the large majority of activity is actually risky behavior, but that wasn't designed as a threat, didn't involve the malicious actor. So I think we really like the word insider risk. I think the industry the term insider risk, the industry is starting to take on that term as a whole. Gartner just named this category insider risk management because users, as we all know, if we've been in security for any amount of time, users do stupid things, and they do stupid things that create risk. And what we're all trying to do in this space is minimize that kind of risk. And so it's everything.
Let me clarify the use of the term stupid here. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of them think of it as stupid. They think of it as I'm doing my job and this is getting in my way. That's Masha, true. You're smiling at that. Yes? No?
Right. Yeah. No, I think stupid is the word security uses to apply to it. Yeah. No, I don't think any employee thinks I think they're actually being quite creative and efficient at their job. Yeah.
Okay.
The way that I think about it is an overlap of a Venn diagram. So one of them is you have your malicious and intentional, and then you have your unintentional, which I think is probably the most benign way of saying it. But there's still mistakes, right? Whether or not I am introducing ransomware because I'm getting a kickback. I don't know if any of you saw that amazing post where ransomware was being offered a portion of the bonus to deploy it, or if you're introducing it and intentionally, you're still introducing ransomware in an organization as one version of it, right? There's obviously a lot of permutations of this kind of risk, but there's this whole spectrum of unintentional all the way through. I work for a foreign government and am paid actively to subvert documents. So, Joe, as you were saying, I really do think that the industry has finally caught up in moving it from insider threat, which I think talks about it in a very narrow way, to insider risk, which is looking at potential ways my employees can lead to an incident, and their motivation may vary.
Yeah, David, to expound upon that, because I agree with that completely. I think people used to think of this category as the foreign national coming into your office, planting malware so they can collect data, or taking other people's documents. And that's really not the area that's causing the most risk. That is certainly an area that we all want to watch out for as security people. But we're actually seeing the number one indicator of creating insider risk today, believe it or not, is people departing. Is people leaving the company. And what they do when they leave the company is they typically take some information that they believe belongs to them, or that could belong to them, or they believe, we've talked to a lot of these folks, or they believe, well, no one really cares that I'm taking this. Or in the case of like source code, they'll say, well, I mean, it's my source code. I did leave a copy. The company's running it. And so I just took my source code with me, and I didn't hurt the company because I left it. And so that's an example of, we can argue whether that person's malicious or not. I wouldn't use the word malicious. I would say they're uninformed, but they created a lot of risk for the company if they take their source code with them that was paid for by the company. So you asked at the beginning, what are all the flavors of this? There's a lot of flavors out there, and I think over the next hour we'll tell lots of stories, because I think that's the thing that always surprises people the most, the different types of people and the different jobs and the different kind of information that they take is very different than what we used to think of 25 years ago as insider threat, when insider threat meant I got to go in at night with a copier machine, steal some files, break into the file cabinet, Xerox it, and then sneak out under the cover of darkness. We're not seeing that. We're just seeing the person in HR dragging a file across her desktop into a Dropbox folder, and all of a sudden, all of our payroll data is gone someplace else. And that employee, when you talk to them, they're like, well, I wasn't really doing anything, and nobody said I couldn't. And so the problem has gotten to be that there's a lot of education issues in addition.
Well, it seems that education is a pretty big problem here. I'm actually going to jump a little bit into the weeds right away, because Mike Wilkes has a really good question here that I want to jump on. Mike is the CISO over at Security Scorecard. And he asks, what is the average cost of an insider risk investigation? And he says $3,000 or higher when engaging an outside forensic investigation team and outside counsel. First of all, how often are you going into, I'll start with you, Masha. How often is one going into an insider risk investigation, and how often do you need to get outside counsel too, for that matter?
Yeah. So the world where I play in is a lot more predictive and proactive as opposed to the responsiveness. So I can't speak to the exact numbers associated with it. But if you take a look at the unintentional insider risk, most of the breaches that you're familiar with can be attributed to what I define as insider risk, right? Whether or not someone like the intern at SolarWinds is posting credentials inappropriately, unintentionally, right? But or sharing information they shouldn't, right? That obviously has a huge scale. But I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I'd be curious to hear what Joe says if he has any specific numbers. But I do think we a lot of the things we investigate as breach costs is very overlap with insider risk costs.
By the way, a lot of really great bad ideas are coming in, a flood of them, in fact.
Brilliant.
So kudos to everybody here. I saw Bryn had one that was the level of the red dye in the swimming pool idea to scare the crap out of anybody who shares something that they shouldn't have been sharing. Joe, do you have any insight? Just I'm going to sort of segment Mike's question in two ways. One is, how often are you investigating an insider risk issue, and how often does that investigation require an outside counsel? And do you have any idea of costs there?
So like Masha, we are on the proactive side. We sell software to companies so that they can do this quickly and easily and hopefully catch the risk before they're hiring outside counsel. What I do know is the minute you have to go hire FireEye or Mandiant or one of those folks, you're already talking in the $200,000 to $300,000 price range just to get them to walk in the door, which is ironic when we're talking to people like, you need to get ahead of this because you can't afford to do multiple of these things. And if you've got lots of people exfiltrating data, you can't be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars here or there. I think so we both believe in the strategy of, hey, get ahead of this and make sure that people understand what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, be transparent about what you're doing, and then have trust but verify. Have technology in place that watches what everybody's actually doing and what they're taking, and then you can course correct them as you go.
Let me ask, so one of the things we addressed early on was the issue of like education. And I know we're going to hit this, but I get your average non-security person, this isn't on their radar. It just isn't in most cases until they're educated. I would throw that. So what are we looking at in terms of, and I'm going to throw this to you, Masha, because I think this is in your wheelhouse. What are we looking at to up an organization's security education so that the concept of insider risk, everything we're talking about right now, is actually on their radar? So we're talking from zero, like what you discussed, it just copied a Dropbox. I didn't think anything was wrong with that, to the, I know I'm not supposed to copy to Dropbox. Essentially taking it from those two different mindsets. Yeah.
So it's a good question. So, I mean, there's all the way on the spectrum of malicious and willful actions. And for things that are very egregious, most people tend to know that they're crossing a line, right? When they're stealing a laptop or plugging USB to download data that they shouldn't have, right? And we're going to leave those aside. And there's things that are intuitively wrong, but you're so disgruntled that you're trying to take it out on the company. Right. The thing that we're looking at, though, from an unintentional risk, or even a place where people are over leveraging their data, is that it's not what people know that matters. It's what they do. And this is the point that I think you were making. People don't even realize until theoretically we train them. But what we have been seeing in a lot of data and analysis is that despite repetitive training to individuals, most people don't course correct their behavior over time. So if we'll take a look at handling sensitive data or clicking malicious links, we find that employees tend to fall in one of two buckets. They're either doing this one behavior repeatedly, a bad one, or they're already vigilant and they get it and they understand the consequences. And what a proactive and a preventative strategy around this does is take a look at understanding who might introduce that kind of risk before it actually happens, who has access to this kind of data that can introduce have a wider blast radius, as Joe was saying earlier. Identify, trust, but verify. And so what you're doing is identifying basically which employees are riskier than others before they become a liability, and then create appropriate controls, support. It could be training, but I want to encourage the fact that training is literally one of a huge tool set that security teams have available to them today. And that includes stricter policies, more control, more thoughtful monitoring, additional scrutiny, step-up authentication, a lot of tools we already have in place today, but don't apply at a very granular level. Right now, we do is very one size fits all and say, yeah, I have it or I don't. But if you can think about risk at an individual level and start tailoring it, you can use all of these tools, not just training, which I think if training was going to work, it would have worked 2 decades ago. And just doing more of it is not going to suddenly solve this problem. We actually have to take the things we've already used for other things like controls and adaptive authentication and policies and start using much more granular approach than we have in the past.
All right, I want to throw this to Joe. Good point.
I was going to say, what make a podcast fun is if the guests disagree with each other a little bit, right? So I just want to disagree just a little bit on the training side, and the reason is where we are in the life cycle right now. I actually think training can make an enormous difference, and what we started doing is we started building these training videos for our own staff when they started doing things wrong, and all of a sudden our customers were saying, "Hey, wait, can we have some of that? And how do you all do that?" And so we've broken the training videos down into 3 kinds. The first is proactive, which is the standard security training we all get. Hey, software engineer, you are not allowed to take source code. And believe it or not, just getting a video that explains that to software engineers is a big win right now, because we have most of our millennial and Gen Z software engineers who believe they own their source code. So that's one. At the same time, we want to train proactively our salespeople on what they can do. They won't listen, but at least we want to train them. And then our HR teams about what data they can move, et cetera. So proactive. The second kind is situational. So when something happens, so for example, someone gets their access management privileges increased. Hey, you now have higher access privileges. These are the things we expect from you with regard to insider risk. Or the one that our teams use, our customers use the most is, you're a new employee. Here's what we expect. First of all, don't bring any data in from your last job. Nobody tells you that today. When you come into a new job, nobody says, don't bring data in. That's why I think training can really make a difference right now, is setting the expectation of what's acceptable and not acceptable behavior. Because if your boss tells you, hey, did you bring any contacts from your last job? Can you bring those in? You need to know that that's a no-no. So that's situational. Also,
well, but a lot of people get hired. Well, for context, I mean, salespeople do get hired for the Rolodex, don't they?
Yeah, but you can't bring your pipeline from the last job. You can't bring a report from Salesforce of all the deals that you were working on. Can you bring your contacts? Sure, but and that's exactly what you have to define for the sales team, right? And don't bring proprietary documents or pipeline documents from your last company. Most salespeople bring that stuff, and their sales manager will say, "Hey, can we use that?" And so if you don't know that that's not right, then that's a problem. So the situational is important. Also, the last situational is departing employee. Hey, we noticed you put your notice in. Here's what we expect. Here's what we're watching. We look for data moving to untrusted devices. Don't put things in Dropbox. Don't put things in Gmail, etc. And you give them those warnings as they leave, so they know what they're not supposed to do. And then ignorance isn't an excuse. And also, it keeps good people from making bad decisions. Look, we're people. We make bad decisions all the time. So we know we're not supposed to take those documents. But if we think no one's paying attention, we will. So the situational training in that scenario really can make a difference. Then the last part, and this is one a lot of security teams are loving, reactive training. Hey, we just noticed that you sent something to Dropbox. Dropbox is a non-sanctioned activity. Please use G Drive or OneDrive, whatever your customer uses. We just noticed that you mailed corporate documents using your Gmail account. Please know that that's not authorized here. If you need help with your email client, please contact IT. So those 3 kinds of training we think are one of what I call the 3 T's of a good insider risk program and transparency, training, and technology. And that training is critical. And I will share one last thing with this group. because spoiler alert, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Code 42 is announcing its new product called Code 42 Instructor that has all of that built in, all of those lessons, all prepackaged up for people. And look, we're not in the education business, but every customer we had was like, hey, can we borrow your videos? Hey, can we use your videos? Hey, can we... And we hadn't really produced them professionally. We were like, okay. And we decided to make a product out of it. So that's coming tomorrow. And now my PR team's going to be really mad at me that I gave it up tonight.
Yeah, well, you are the CEO, so I guess you do have the final say on that. I should mention that our poll for the best bad idea, or for you to vote on your favorite bad idea, is up, and there were a flood that came in. So please go ahead and vote, because in 10 minutes we'll be playing the Department of Yes. Also, because it's only going to be up there for a few more minutes longer, please click on the link at the bottom of the screen to register for Friday's event, Hacking Active Directory, as well. That will be a fun one as well. All right, let's get to more questions that I have. I do like, by the way, the two of you have a very nice sort of balanced look at this, and I'm glad that I have both of you on here. Can you measure, what you're looking, when you were talking about it, Masha, you're talking about it as yes, training can help. And what we've heard a lot of times is you can never train to perfection. So don't even try. That's pointless. But you're saying, let's just isolate where the problems could conceivably be the greatest here in terms of who has access to the most risky behavior. Can you measure an overall risk with can you measure that risk decreases with an increase in security culture? And that could be security culture through training. It could be security culture in terms of putting controls on top of things, security culture in terms of how I'm dealing with these more sensitive employees. I mean, how does one do that?
Yeah. So I define security culture as what happens when the security team's not looking. And it's not when I'm monitoring my employees, right? It's what do people do, say, act, report, click when they think they're not being observed. And if you take that perspective, it is actually something you can measure. It's not this nebulous thing that, it's just the air we breathe in our culture. After a while, you can say, if I had a security culture that was strong and resilient, what would it look like? What would my employees do tomorrow that they don't do today? And often it comes down to a couple of behaviors related to how they handle sensitive data. How often do they click on phishing links, and how often do they report them? Mistakes happen. Reporting is sort of the key piece of this. How often do we get flagged and notified of issues that we aren't aware of as a security team? Those are just some examples in categories associated with it. And when I give people feedback, it's interesting. I think Joe's using the word training for it. I consider it feedback, right? When someone course corrects, we let them know that they're not doing something great. Does that stick? Do people hear that, and are they interested in course correcting? And it is actually quite possible to measure that kind of security culture as a series of actions that your employees take on a daily, ongoing basis. In fact, most security teams have access to these logs as a function of their endpoint gateways and their web proxies and their reporting structure. So there's a lot of telemetry already out there that can gauge how secure your culture actually is. It's just a function of defining what it means for you in your organization, and then spending the time reinforcing that in your employees. And there's two ways to do this, right? So there's ways that you can reinforce what you want from your employees from a culture perspective with, as I was mentioning, controls and policies, and using technology to do this, right? I can make everyone have unique passwords and reinforce that, or I can get everyone to use MFA and a password manager. Either way, we're getting to ideally the same outcome. And then I can also use positive reinforcement and encouragement to give that encourage employees to do more of that. That's my favorite way of getting salespeople and executives to do more of positive security actions that we want. And when you can identify what someone does at an individual level, it's so much easier to give them personalized feedback and personalized recognition and reward. I know there's a couple of bad ideas about giving people cookies whenever they don't do data loss. I realized that was a bad idea, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of positive encouragement. We do it for our dogs.
I don't think it's
our children, right? Maybe not
I don't think
cookies.
it's that bad idea.
Yeah.
By the way, I enjoy a good cookie.
Right. I'll do a lot of security actions for a good cookie.
All right. Joe, do you have an answer to this question? Essentially, it's about measuring, and I think this is part of Code 42's solution, but just measuring the change in risk after you start taking these sort of insider risk positive actions. I guess I'm going to sum it up like that.
Well, it's astonishing, honestly, when to see what happens over the course of the year. What happens is when you first put in a program, an insider risk program, if you put in a modern one that really looks at everything and assumes positive intent and stuff, at the beginning, you'll be a little depressed. I'll be honest with you. We started at Code 42 and my friends at CrowdStrike they had the same thing. Basically, everyone was exfiltrating data, particularly departing employees. No one was watching the store. And so everyone was exfiltrating data in a modern way. Everyone's DLP, they're like, oh, I have my DLP in place. 90% of breaches had a DLP in place. Like DLP doesn't work. They might see a USB exfiltration, but throw something in your Gmail, DLP is like, oh, we don't see that. That's not in the recs. So, it was depressing seeing so many people take all that data. Once you start telling people, look, these are the rules, this is what we're watching for, and we're not monitoring employees, we monitor data moving to untrusted devices. So if you move data outside of the company to some untrusted location, we see that. And just telling people that, it drops dramatically. And it takes about 7 or 8 months. And it does help to have a few public cases where you literally go back to your teams and say, look, we had an employee who's leaving. You're not outing the person. You're not trying to get some person in trouble, but you're saying like this person took these things. And by the way, this is why, if you're wondering, like, why does Tesla sue everybody that leaves them? They do that on purpose. They do that because they want everybody else to know. If you take a bunch of data when you leave, because they have more insider threat cases or insider risk cases than anybody in the market that are public. When they do that, they want everybody else to know. Now, they're very heavy-handed about it. Like in my company, we tell it like it is. Here's what happened. Here's what people did. And we presume that they didn't really want to do that or mean to do that, but like it makes them think twice. And so today at Code 42, nobody takes anything because they know if they do, we catch them. And what we see a lot of today then is all the accidental stuff. Hey, many of you probably know this because you're in security and you probably have Macs. iCloud automatically syncs. They have a setting that they set on new Macs. Basically, once you log in, you plug in your iPhone the first time, it's going to sync your data to iCloud. And it just does it unless you turn it off. And so we see time and time again, new employees who come to Code 42, the first time they plug in their iPhone, all of a sudden a bunch of data comes down from their iCloud account onto their laptop. And guess what that data is? It's data they had at their last company when they were plugged their iPhone in at their last company. And so all of a sudden we have the proprietary data of the last security company they worked for coming into our environment. And we're used to it now. So the first time it happened, we kind of panicked and we were like, we got to fire that person. And we didn't. My security team's smart. They went and talked to her and she was like, oh, I just plugged my iPhone in. I didn't do anything. And that was a classic case of unintended risk. But it's fun for us to have those now because we love going and talking to the company that person came from and saying, here's all the data that was exfiltrated and came to our place. And you need to put a new insider risk management program in place so you see it before it leaves. Because in this case, we caught it, we cleaned it, it's all good, no risk. But like you probably have people going to other companies too.
Joe, I'm curious, you brought this up in a previous example in this one. What are your thoughts on what is the responsibility of a new employer who has an employee who's left a previous company with data? I've heard you allude to this and say, as an employer, it's your responsibility to flag that and turn away that data. But I'm wondering, are there any that you're aware of legal repercussions as a company that knowingly accepts insider data from another company from a new employee?
Quick answer on this one.
Yes, and yes. Hundreds of millions of dollars. All Anthony Lewandowski went to Uber and took all that data. Who paid the fine? It wasn't Google where he left. It was Uber. It's big money. It's big, you have big liability. And speaking as the CEO, it's the kind of thing that petrifies me, because if we take someone's data in and use it, even if it's unknowing, if we use it, now my IP is at risk. Now I can get sued. They could take a part of my company. So I don't want someone else's data. When I hire people, I don't want them to bring someone else's work. I want them to come and use their talents to create work for me.
I'm going to have a question about that later. Hold on, Masha. We got a call.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
It is time for the Department of Yes, and this is where the two of you have to take these horrible, horrible bad ideas that have come in, and you have to explain why you want to embrace them, why you actually want to run these in your environment. All right? I'm going to pick two of these, not necessarily the two most popular voted up, but I'm going to pick two well voted up ones, and it's actually this very first one here, which got a lot of votes. And here we go. I'll start with you, Masha. Again, you have to explain why you actually want to employ this, and I am the judge and jury, and I will tell you whether that is a good answer or not. Got it?
Okay, great.
Here we go. Make accounts for everyone, and thus collapse insider risk with the regular risk, quote, regular risk, and you have one less InfoSec work stream to staff. So the idea is, I think, compress all risk or all your sort of individual insider risk in with whatever is deemed as regular risk. Why do you actually want to do this? And by the way, speak up if this is yours.
I think I'm following the question, but if we're giving everybody accounts to all systems,
Yes.
well, it reduces business friction, right? You no longer, employees are no longer waiting on access to critical things. They can just get the job done. You know, if everyone's admin, then no one's waiting on anything. It's a free for all, really. It's a maximum speed of business.
Okay.
Yes.
Good answer. I like that. It does speed up business considerably right now, because we're not dealing with as much risk issues as we could be. Joe, how are you dealing with this, and why are you embracing this?
Yes. I love this idea. In fact, you know, my whole mantra is secure the collaboration culture, meaning I want everybody to have access to collaborative tools. I want them to have accounts in everything. I want them to share data, and I just want to keep an eye on all of it. And so if it leaves my environment and goes, or one of my machines, and goes to an untrusted location, then we have an issue. But until then, open the floodgates.
So access for everybody, access to everything. Just make sure it doesn't leave. Is that the idea?
I mean, that's actually the Code 42 mantra.
It's not a bad idea at all, in fact. All right. Let's go for the second one. All right. Now, this one's a pretty harsh one. This one actually puts your business in a pretty precarious place. Here we go. Okay. Publish every internal document publicly, then it doesn't matter who shares it. Joe, I'm going to make you handle this one first.
Honestly, I love this idea. This is a fantastic idea, because if you publish every document, then you don't have to worry about someone stealing any of your documents. Nobody's stealing anything. They're all out there. And let's be honest, most other companies can't actually make sense of any of your internal documents anyway. What are they going to do with it? So I say yes, we publish it, and just basically...
Let's pause right here. Let's pause right here. Let's pause right here, Joe. Think of one internal document that if another company had it, it might bring your company to the knees. You've got a document or two like that, right?
I mean, like payroll, like
payroll, something like that. Publishing payroll. Source code to your programming, to your program.
Remember, my 3 T's are, the first one is transparency. So I'm a big believer in transparency, but it's hard not to be. You said no being facetious, but it's really hard not to be facetious on every public document. I guess the other thing I could say about this one is that if we published every document publicly, it would shine a light on the problem. People would understand how valuable our data actually is once it's out in the wild, creating havoc for our company.
So I'm going to give you this, but here's the thing you could do. This is like, you know, when you sell a mailing list and you put some bogus names in the mailing list so that if someone tries to resell it a second time, you could put bogus data in these public documents. Yeah,
like honeypot documents.
There you go. There you go.
Misguided, yeah. So your competitors they're not sure which one's going where.
Honeypot documents. So it's tainted public documents. Yes. Screw around with that document at your own risk.
Totally
David,
right.
that's a much better answer because honestly, my employees and we always create bad data all the time is the truth. So there's even just making all of our documents public, there's going to be plenty of bad data in there.
Oh, yeah. Masha, I'm giving that to both of us on that last one. All right.
Yeah,
that was, I see Riley Bruce on the second one, and we got Mike Wilkes on the first one. So Mike and Riley, be ready in about 5 to 10 minutes. I think we'll do it in 5 minutes. Actually, we'll do it in 5 minutes. You're going to come on camera and we'll ask you to defend why your idea is truly the worst idea of the two. And you'll have to, and the two of you will be judging on that. All right. I want to go back to something that you were talking about just before I kind of cut you short to be able to play the game. And that is, can the issue of insider risk be dealt at the hiring level? To what level can we start dealing with insider risk before an employee comes in? Masha, you were nodding your head. Like, what are red flags? Like, wow, this employee is really talented, but oh my God, they're going to be nothing but a risk problem.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you something that I would not put into a program. And this is the answer to this question is mostly no, but I will tell you one way that it can be yes. One of the hats I used to wear way back when I used to do some defense work for the U.S. government, one of the things that they look at is how many unpaid parking tickets an employee has. Because what that shows is a disregard of authority and thinking that rules don't apply to you. Obviously, it is not a huge case. And by the way, I'm not saying on the record here that you should not hire people who have unpaid parking tickets. I just feel like I probably just back myself into a corner. But there are ways that indicate mindset about how much do people think that the rules written do or do not apply to you. But now let
me throw something out there. I had a friend who had a ton of parking tickets, and she went to the DMV and sweet talked her way out of all of them. That's the person I want to hire, though. Don't you?
Yeah, they should be on the security team. Yeah, they should be in your social engineering team. Yeah. But what you're doing is insider risk, at least the way that I look at it, is a function of the decision someone makes in your environment with your data sets in those circumstances. When you're trying to do it before someone hires them, you're profiling, right? And that becomes less and less applicable to the kind of insider risk that we're dealing with today in the data sets that we're trying to solve. So the answer overall is, I would say, no, you can't, because I'm looking at how do you act with the data and in the environment that I'm giving you, and trying to prevent and predict accidents there. Otherwise, we're moving into Minority Report, and it gets dangerous.
I would agree with that 100%.
So I want to take the same question. I want to quickly ask if Riley is going to be able to join us, because he was talking about needing a proxy, a second to be his champion. I don't know if Riley's going to be joining us. I hope he is. We'll see. I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead. Answer the question. How much can we deal with this at the hiring level?
Well, no, I agree with that 100%, because here's the thing. Let me ask this audience right now. Think about yourself. Have you ever taken anything from one of your employers, any documents when you left? I would say the answer is 100%. Yeah. Yes. So I think,
by the way, I flat out lied, Joe. Saying that when they asked me, are you taking anything? I go, no, I'm not. When I was flat out lying.
Most people don't ask. Over 90% of companies don't ask, are you taking any data? You know, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, David. When people when people leave, you say, can I have your badge? I don't want you to have physical access. I get your computer back so you can't get on the network. But they don't even ask you, did you take any of your data? And so 9 out of 10 companies don't even ask. So this is a problem. So people take a lot of data. I had a great mentor, when I was 17 years old, my first job in retail. And here's what he said. He said, look, Joe, as far as people stealing from you, 10% of the people will always steal from you, no matter what. 10% of the people will never steal from you, no matter what. And 80% will steal from you if you create the conditions and you give them the opportunity to do it. Now, I don't know if those numbers are right. You know, he made those up, I think. But like in my career, I found, well, that's really interesting. And the point is, your job in creating a security program for insider risk is to make sure that you don't set up those conditions for that middle, whatever that is, 80%. And that's what Masha said, is basically it's all about the environment that you create. So from my perspective, the way you solve this on incoming employees is you explain what your culture is, you explain what the expectations are, and you explain what we expect you to do here at our environment. And that's why that upfront, I mean, it sounds simple, but that upfront 2-minute video when you're a new employee is enough to say, they pay attention to that here, they care about here, that's an issue, they don't expect me to bring data from my other organization. That's the best way to start. You don't want them to take data from you when they leave. Make sure you tell them you don't want them to bring in data when they come, because you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth on that thing,
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen in our data sets that new hires tend to be riskier employees. They click on phishing links more often than tenured employees. And so it just makes sense to create environments and controls that are a little bit more restrictive, a little bit more hand-holding for new hire employees until they understand what normal looks like and what's expected. And so thinking about, to the earlier point, treating employees slightly differently based on their different risk profiles. One of the things that we've seen is new hires are risky because they haven't calibrated to what normal looks like in an environment yet.
Okay. We're going to give another 5 minutes to see if Riley is going to find a camera. If not, Rory will be his second on this. And I do want to mention that we do have the link for registering for the Insider Risk Summit. We are on the eve of the Insider Risk Summit. It's starting tomorrow. It's 2 days. It's completely free. Masha, I believe you're giving the opening keynote, yes? No,
I am not. I do not have the privilege, but that guy.
Joe
but
is?
Also, there's some really amazing lineup there, including one of our favorite risk Gartner analysts and some awesome thought leaders in the insider risk space.
Right. I mean, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, Aberdeen, they're all speaking. Microsoft. I'm giving the opening keynote tomorrow. Thank you, David, for the plug. It's at 12:15 Eastern.
I thought it was Masha. I thought you were teasing it was Masha earlier.
It's also live. Here's the thing. I'm doing a live keynote. Nobody does that anymore. And I was like, let's do it live.
This is live. What do you think this is?
Exactly. This is so much more fun, right? This is so much more fun than all the tape stuff everybody's been doing for the last year. So it could be a train wreck. So come and see.
Well, you would have to prove yourself to be a train wreck here for people to see you to be a train wreck tomorrow. All right, Rory's going to be the one to go up for. All right, let's invite both Rory and Mike on to defend their bad ideas as which one's worth. Two of you will have to vote for the best bad idea of those two. But I want you to know anyone can keep submitting bad ideas because we'll determine that within a couple of days. And I should mention the winner of the best bad idea gets an awesome CISO series fleece as well. The link at the bottom of the screen, register for the Insider Risk Summit, which will be for the next 2 days. You can click on that and stick around because, when this is over in exactly 18 minutes, yes, send invites now, Andrew. Go ahead, send the invites now. So Rory and Mike, accept the invites that are coming to you right now. We'll say is in 18 minutes, we're going to do our meetup portion, and it's really, really fun. And we're going to be doing Toucan, which is different than the other platform we were using. So you'll have fun with that. All right. As we're waiting for them to come in, I'm going to ask a question that just came in from Arunish Saihotra. You know what? I'm not going to ask the question because they're now on right now. So I'll get to that question when we're back. We have Rory and Mike will be joining. Rory is defending Riley's bad idea, which was, I think, was that canning everybody? What was? Now I can't remember. What was Riley's bad idea?
I think it was the publish all documents, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, publish the documents publicly. I'm sorry, publish the documents publicly. Rory, who are you with, by the way?
Company?
What organization?
Or Torch Technologies.
Torch Technologies. Okay, excellent. All right, well, we got to get Mike on here. Is Mike coming on? There's Mike. All right. Mike had the first one. I'll ask Mike to actually answer first. Mike is the CISO over at Security Scorecard. Mike, please defend. That was your making everyone have sort of full access to everything, correct? Explain yours, and you'll have to determine, again, Masha and Joe, which one is the worst purely from a risk perspective. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
So no one's an insider if everyone's an insider. So create free accounts for everyone because then you have no more user administration problems. You have no more permissioning problems. Everyone's elevated access. And it's a lot easier than filtering through permissions on Google Documents, right? And nested permissions on file shares. So I think point source solution at the people, not the documents, better than sharing all your docs.
And are you talking about all employees of a company, or are you just like beyond?
No,
like
I mean every human on
contractors,
Earth. Yeah.
every human. Okay, yeah, everything's public.
It's
okay.
a big, big bad idea.
It's
So
a big,
this is extreme socialism, is what it is. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean identity. We're all manifestations of the one anyway, right?
Okay.
And so let's get Eastern.
It's
All right. I like that.
It's a
That's
form of open source, though. I mean, in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of open sourced our whole company.
yeah.
It's Brahma sourcing instead of crowdsourcing.
All right. That's pretty damaging. Rory, defend yours.
Well, really, we're talking about the greater good of society in general, and companies are going to get the same ideas anyway. So really, there's no. We're really just advancing information and progress further if everybody has the information at the same time, and so ideas come out quicker, and you'll just rise to the top anyways because we're all sharing it. There's no need in protecting it.
All right. So I will ask you, Joe, which one of these is more damaging? Which one creates more risk, do you believe?
Mike's, and I'll tell you why. They're very close because they're both want to give everybody everything, except Mike's also creating user accounts for everybody and giving everybody full privileges. I think if I read it right, Roy was just giving everyone all the data. So that's why I'm going to say Mike's is the worst idea.
All right.
Sorry, Mike.
Mike, No, you're supposed to. He's going for the worst idea. That's the goal here. Masha, who do you vote for here?
Yes.
Rory / Riley or Mike here for the bad ideas?
So yeah, we could still have like a sabotage campaign with Riley's idea with misinformation, but when everyone's got access to everything, it's game over from a security standpoint. It's a new frontier. So it depends on what your goal is, but as far as security, that's definitely the worst idea.
So you're going with Rory Riley?
No. I'm going with Mike.
Mike, I'm sorry.
Mike's my vote, yeah.
Mike's your vote. All right, Mike wins. Congratulations, Mike. I'm sorry, and that you did it. Rory, for being a champion for Riley, good job on this. Riley, you can get on Rory's case for not fighting harder for you.
I'm sorry, buddy.
A kind word for the work that Elevate is doing. I remember speaking to a security awareness director at a company that was breached many years ago that made the headlines. And they brought in a really smart woman from the FBI to start creating the carrot approach instead of the stick and creating a really good security culture. And I was very pleased to hear, that they were using Elevate, to sort of record and track everything that they were doing and sort of build this big campaign around it. I think you're onto a really good approach. So thank you for creating the company and growing it.
Oh, Mike. Amazing. Kudos. Good job. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. All right. We've got some, by the way, our good, unique tips that have come in as well. And I want to mention one, and I want to know, again, these are unique tips, not necessarily, good ideas because we're getting more general. And we're trying to hack the concept. We're trying to delve into this concept more. I want to know if you think this works and you go down this road is gamify learning and create monetary incentives for individuals and teams. Is this a good idea, bad idea? Depends. Where do you think, Masha?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on this. So gamification is a double-edged sword. My favorite very quick example of how this backfires is in Vietnam after the French occupation. They wanted to get rid of rats, so they started paying people $1 to bring in a dead rat. Whatever the dollar equivalent is at the time. And then they decided that a pile of dead rats was no longer easy to clean up. So then they just started paying people $1 for a tail. And then people just started raising rats and chopping off their tails for the $1. And then they just kept recycling the same rats for the tails, thereby making the problem even worse. So you got to be very, very careful about what it is you're gamifying. If you're gamifying
let's start on the rat thing. Let's slow down on the rat thing.
Okay.
So most companies are not doing things where they're introducing dead rodents into the organization.
No. I'm about to bring it home to security. If you really want me to just
No, but by the way, great analogy. I like that. It's just I don't know if we're having dead rodents.
No dead rodents. The thing is, why do you train people? It's for some kind of security outcome. Mm-hmm. So if you're gamifying, which is rewarding, recognizing, encouraging people, you need to make sure you're rewarding them for the right behavior. If you're rewarding people for completing quiz questions or completing a training, that's not the outcome you're actually driving for. You need to be understanding what it is you're actually driving towards. Is it reduction of efficient click-throughs? It's increasing reporting rates. Is it more thoughtful data handling, data loss, reducing data loss incidents? Then you can gamify it. Then you can reward, have leaderboards, best in class, number of days since last accident. All of these things are gamification principles. But you have to be incredibly careful about incentivizing a behavior just to incentivize. What I've seen how this has backfired, to tie it all the way home from rodents to, let's say, secure app development, is for finding and fixing bugs in code faster. When gamified the wrong way, developers introduce the bugs and then they close it themselves in order to get the points and the recognitions around that, thereby defeating the whole circumstance. So getting very clear on what you want and having accurate measurement of this is the key.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, Joe, gamification, financial incentives, good or bad idea? And how far can it go if you do it?
I mean, I do believe in rewarding people for good behavior and learning and taking the time to learn the stuff they're supposed to learn. And so, but I don't believe in overtly over rewarding, because again, it can get thwarted. So right now, I just think the problem, if I come back to insider risk, I think the biggest part of the problem is honestly, I think it's a education problem. And so that people, because I inherently believe in that 80% of people that really don't want to do something bad. And so I do like to assume positive intent on those folks. And so making sure they know what the rules are, they know what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed not to do, et cetera. And then they're gently course corrected when they do things that I probably inappropriately labeled stupid at the beginning of the podcast, but that are just things they're doing to get their job done. So using Dropbox, using their Gmail, doing things like that are to move faster, And so I like the idea of positive reinforcement for people that take the time to learn what our culture is and then enforce our culture. I wish I had some great examples of that and ideas of that. Don't have a lot of those yet. I haven't seen a lot of people using gamification and insider risk yet, but it's actually, I wrote it down as soon as you said it. And so you've put the idea in my head. So when we talk in a year, maybe I'll have some good examples for you on things we'll try.
All right, sounds good. Now, I want to ask this question that Arunish Sahotra, I hope I'm not butchering it too much, asked, how do you monitor employees that can potentially be scraping source code using a screen reader, or I guess scraping anything using a screen reader, without any EDR out there to catch that behavior? Endpoint detection, I'm assuming at some point there. This is a huge risk related to the work from home structure setup. Do you believe that's a huge risk? Have you seen it be a huge risk, Joe? And is there a way to prevent this, or a way to monitor it or know what's going on?
Yes,
Joe?
and it's a good question. It is a huge risk, but I love security people because we always go to the most sophisticated way that people are going to exfiltrate things. So we have the doors and the windows wide open, and as security people, we're like, what if they cut through the wall in the back corner and they go out that way? That's not what's happening. Today, it is so easy to source code is just text files. So yes, they can take a screenshot of that text file, but in taking a screenshot of that text file, they just created a file. That screenshot is a file in and of itself. And if they then move that screenshot to their Gmail account, or they publicly share it through Slack or something like that, then technology can see that. So having technology, there's technology out there, not just Code 42, there's Microsoft, there's Observe IT, there's other players out there that we would see that kind of move. Now, one of the hardest things to catch is, okay, what if I use my phone and I take a picture of the source code? Can you capture that without having something on my phone? And the answer is probably not. But I will tell you, that's not how people are exfiltrating it, because it's so easy to take the file itself and then I don't have to retype it or do anything else. There's so many ways to exfiltrate it that we see it every single day. Hey, I load it to my own GitHub account. I have my own, GitHub offers. What's interesting about all these technologies we've introduced, they all have, private versions. So there's private Dropbox and public Dropbox. There's private Box, there's G Drive, there's OneDrive, there's GitHub. You just open up your own account and you can drag it in there. And that's what's happening. And so we see that. So my suggestion to security teams is, let's close the doors and the windows first. And then that way, when we see somebody doing something really extreme, because there'll be other ways to catch that person, we know that there's malicious intent involved. Let's just not make it so easy that you walk into the convenience store, nobody's paying attention, you walk right back out with the big candy bar.
All right. I want to mention, I want to wrap this up because we have only 6 minutes left. And I want, Andrew, if you would please change the link to at the bottom to our meetup portion. And then Masha and Joe, I want you to give your closing comments of that. But before I do, I want to just give our sort of closing notes on everything that we've been chatting about today. Okay. So just to remind you, next chat is Friday, the 17th, Hacking Active Directory. If you didn't get a chance to click on the link, don't worry. You can always go to CISOseries.com and click the Register for Video Chats button at any time. Also, stick around for a meetup. Andrew has just changed the link. You can click on it now. That will be our meetup that we're going to be having literally just as soon as this very event ends. And tell your friends to join us. We do this. This was a special event we did on Monday, but we do it regularly every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So please join us again every Friday. And a huge thanks to our sponsor and the event that's going to be happening tomorrow and the next day, the Insider Risk Summit. Just go to insiderrisksummit.com to register for the free event, and you'll get to hear Joe give his live keynote presentation, of which, by the way, Joe, am I going to hear anything more unique than what you said here? Yes? Some additional stuff?
Absolutely.
All right, good.
You bet.
Good. I'm making sure of that. We're holding you to that. If you want to sponsor a video chat, by the way, just email me at david@cisoseries.com. All right, let's wrap this sucker up. I'm going to have you go first, Joe, in a couple minutes. Final thoughts, make any more pitches for the Insider Risk Summit or Code 42 for that matter. But anything you want people to leave this with, and also things you want to chat with them about one-on-one when we go to our meetup right after this.
Sure. First of all, I think if you're here, you're obviously interested in the problem of insider risk. And I think the one thing I want you to take away more than others is that there's actually a new way to solve this problem. And the new way is all about enabling people to do their jobs. Let's not get in the old way of doing it was DLP, which blocked people, which categorized data, which did all this crazy stuff that didn't work. And we've created a whole new category of software that enables collaboration. We want people to use Slack. We want them to use OneDrive. We want them to use Salesforce and GitHub and Workday. But at the same time, we want to wrap a layer of security around that to make sure that, hey, if they're using all those applications and those cloud-based sharing things, we can make sure that they're not sharing data to untrusted locations. And then we can prioritize the few people that do that don't follow the rules and make it really easy for the security teams to handle it. So listen, the last thing I'll leave you with is that the people using this technology, they're using Code 42 today, are people like Snowflake and Okta and CrowdStrike and IBM and on and on and on. They're the security companies today have been the first adopters because it's a much better security strategy and a much better security posture. And if you come to the chat afterwards, I'm happy to answer any questions. We can get technical. We can go into vectors. We can go into how it's different than CASB or anything you want to talk about. This is my favorite topic, so I'm happy to jump in with you.
All right, Masha, you got a minute and a half.
Perfect.
Any last thoughts?
You.
And please, a pitch for Elevate as well.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Really enjoyed the bad ideas. It's really hard to pay attention to what you're saying when all those great bad ideas are coming in. But I wanted to recap a place where we started this conversation is that as a field, we've evolved from insider threat to insider risk. And what many of us used to think as part of this category is just someone who's working for a foreign government exfilling data. And in fact, this is a problem set that has been ubiquitous, but we haven't really focused on it in the same lens. And that is the amount of people in our organization who unintentionally make mistakes that cause our security teams more headache than almost any other threat vector out there. Not almost any, it is the most common threat vector out there. And whether or not you're talking about it as the introduction of ransomware and clicking on phishing links to mishandling sensitive data, the human element is the insider threat of our organization, and our ability to understand this at a much more granular level than we have before is necessary. Otherwise, we're solving everything with one size fits all. And so it is possible to understand risk at an individual level. The thing that Elevate does is help create user reputation scores based on everybody's daily security decisions. How good and bad are they at handling malicious emails and links, et cetera. And so using those risk scores to be able to tailor your security controls and orchestrate your access level to actually be able to create a highly personalized security experience for everyone in your organization.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Masha Sadova, president over at Elevate Security, Joe Payne, who is chairman of the Insider Risk Summit, and also CEO of Code 42. I'm David Spark. Everyone click the link at the bottom and let's go to the meetup. Take us out, Andrew.